Jordan Lee, you're in Kerry, you're in lockdown. How's it been going for you so far?
Not so bad. I'm actually keeping quite motivated at this time. Um, Currently staying in my father's house in Killarney in County Kerry. So I'm very lucky to actually be in such a lovely spot in the country. It's the most ideal place to be in, to be honest with you, in the middle of a global pandemic. So I'm getting some quality training in as well. I've actually got access to a pitch and put course, which is just outside my dad's apartment in Killarney, which is fantastic. So I'm still getting some quality training done as well on top of it. So I'm actually keeping quite motivated at the minute.
So are you running around a pitch and putt course, or how does that work?
So basically, I'm training 6 times a week and I'm doing double sessions 3 times of the week. I'm getting a lot of speed work done, a lot of cardio endurance work done, different variations of plyometrics. And I also have gym equipment as well, which I'm very fortunate to have. So I'm getting pretty much everything in besides jumping over a bar
Hmm.
backwards, which is I doubt I'm going to be able to replicate for a while now. But with the training and the training plan that I've put in place, myself and my coach Tomas Griffin have put in place, we feel like we're actually getting a great benefit. And so when we actually go back to jumping properly at the track, that my body won't go into shock and that would be in pretty good shape.
So training right now involves a lot of running, fast sprinting, that type of thing. Or are you doing a lot more long distance endurance? And is that across, two fairways and a green, or how is that working?
So I'm doing a bit of everything. It's a bit of trial and error involved as well because obviously no athlete or no person in general has ever been in a situation like this before. Um, so when I say speed work, I could be doing 40-meter sprints with a weighted sled. I can be doing hill sprints, 60 meters for a bit of endurance and a bit of speed work involved in that as well. 120-meter tempo runs, going for 3 kilometer jogs. Do you know what I mean? And that's all staying within the the restricted area and guidelines that have been put in place by the government too. And I've also had to be creative with my training. So, for example, I have my gym equipment, but an essential lift for a high jumper and for the majority of athletes is the squat. And as a high jumper, high jumpers do loads and different variations of squats. And a key component to doing the squat is having a squat rack. And obviously, I don't have a squat rack. So I had to be creative in the sense of what I did was I used two of my bins and created my own makeshift squat rack. So it's a very funny experience as well in that sense that I never would have thought I would have been using my two bins for a squat rack. So it really kind of opens your eyes and really kind of makes you become grateful for all the small things as well.
You're finding a lot of innovation there between running over and back on a pitch and putt course and using the bins. Are you in contact much with your coach Tomas? Are you using Zoom, or do you get to see him?
I'd be in contact with him every second day. So we'd call each other every second day to see how things are going, see how the body's feeling, and to see how things are progressing in training in general, and if anything needs to be changed. But myself and Tomas have a really good relationship anyway. Apart of him being my coach, we're actually just good friends in general. So we always want to see how each other is doing anyway.
You have a lucky situation in that you're living with your father and family, but you have two families, and you're in a unusual enough position, in that you have your family in Killarney, but you also have family in Killorglin, so you don't get to see the family in Killorglin so much. How is that going for you, or do you miss them hugely?
I do definitely. So I'm originally from Killarney in County Kerry, but I currently live in Killorglin with my mother, my stepfather, and my three brothers and younger sister. But I went on a training camp to Birmingham about 2.5 months ago before the lockdown happened. And I was actually getting some coaching high jump sessions from one of the best high jump coaches in the world. And his name is Fuzz Khan. He actually coached an Olympic bronze medalist back in 2012, and his name is Robbie Grabarts. So it was great to go over to actually seek some extra knowledge to try and improve my game and to bring it to the next level. And when I came back from Birmingham, I had a chat with my mother and my stepfather, and we thought that it'd be best that I'd stay in my father's house in Killarney, because my family over in Clorgan were extremely cautious about if I was to go out and go and train, and I could potentially bring back the virus to the household, to my younger brothers and sisters, and we didn't want that happening. So we came up with the decision that I'd stay in Killarney with my father and actually get some quality training in and not have to worry about bringing the virus back to my younger brothers and sisters.
But that must have been a difficult decision in many ways, but I suppose it's reflective of the time. You were quite unlucky that you were in Birmingham at that stage to when the lockdown began, but at the same time you got a lot of work done. So you've been able to maintain that level of work? Looking forward to getting back to it, I suppose.
Definitely. I mean, the only thing that I can't do currently at this moment in time is actually jump over a bar. I'm using this as an opportunity to actually improve on my weaknesses and turn them into my strengths. So I'm doing a lot of technical work at this moment in time and doing a lot of U runs and a lot of technical stuff got to do with the high jump. So I'm just seeking this as an opportunity to actually better myself and to become a better overall high jumper as well on top of it.
When we saw you, Jordan, you were competing at the World Championships in Dubai. Sometimes it's easy to forget how young you are, and that being your first World Championships. When you reflect back on that now, what do you take away from the experience in Dubai?
Yeah, so Dubai was quite a funny experience. Was going into the competition ranked number 2 in the world just after turning 19 years of age, with a lot of pressure from everybody as well, knowing that I'm going into the competition and there was a lot of expectations on me to come out with a medal. Obviously, it was quite unfortunate that I picked up a heel injury 2 weeks before the competition, but I wasn't going to let that stop me perform and compete for my country, because that I always feel is the greatest pride in the world, is representing the country of Ireland. Reflecting back on it, I suppose I actually jumped really well for someone with a heel injury because my heel was extremely sore. I ended up jumping 1 meter 87 and I couldn't even jump 1 meter 75 3 days before the competition. So looking back on it and reflecting back, I'm actually quite proud of myself as to how well myself and Tomas were able to get my game together to be able to jump those heights in the competition and to finish 6th in the world. I mean, it's still a good achievement, but I always know that I can do better, and my attitude is always the same, that I'm never satisfied with where I'm at. And I feel that's what every athlete needs to have in order to actually progress and to move on to the next level. And that's the attitude I'm always going to have, because one day I want to be the best jumper in the world, and I believe that I definitely will be the best.
It's great to hear you say that, Jordan. And just how is your heel now?
My heel is perfect. It's 100% recovered. Had to take some time off jumping. I couldn't get back consistently training for about a month and a half afterwards. It was really sore, but glad to say that I'm back into the swing of things now. Everything is good. Body is feeling healthy, and I'm getting some quality training in at the minute.
When the championships were happening, you obviously had that injury. It's not something that you spoke about. You didn't want to have any excuses, but injuring your heel for a high jumper is a devastating injury for your performance hopes. I mean, can you put in context how much more difficult that type of injury made it to compete at the highest level that you would have hoped to?
Yeah, so basically what happened is I suffered some actual bone bruising in my heel, which is extremely sore, especially when you're jumping as well. When you plant your foot, you're putting 8 times your own body weight into the force of the ground when you go off for liftoff. And in the warm up before the competition, I remember doing a couple of scissor jumps over the bar and I was in pain. And I knew I was in pain. And it was a bit of a funny experience in the sense where I knew I was in pain, but I had to stay as positive and as confident as possible, because I knew that I was still the second ranked high jumper in the world, and I had to keep that mindset in my head whether I was injured or not. And if it wasn't for that, I definitely wouldn't have jumped the way I jumped in the competition, because I shouldn't have jumped 187 with my heel, because I was in desperate pain. You saw me after the competition when we did our interview. I was limping and everything afterwards. But I had to keep that confidence and I had to stay positive. And ultimately, I opened up my highest ever height in a competition and cleared 183 in my first go, which even my coach Tomas was probably a bit shocked by that. But that's just the mindset you have to have. You just have to keep on going. And in my case, continue to keep on raising the bar every single time you go out there, and no excuses can be made.
Injuries aside, though, it must have been great to go and compete at a huge event like that for the, I know you competed at the Europeans, but this was yet another step up. It was with the very, very best in the world. So you got to see these guys competing beside you and watch their routines, and the cameras were there, and a huge stand, the weather and all those experiences that you have being in a different country. What have you learned for yourself going forward outside of the experience or outside of the performance? What have you learned about yourself in those big situations?
I suppose really, and it's kind of a different kind of perspective of looking at it, is to, like, obviously I enjoy the experience whenever I compete in any major competition. But when we're in a situation like this, and the chances of a competition happening this year is quite slim, and looking back at previous competitions from the years before, just look back on it and be grateful for all the competitions that you have, and when you're actually competing in them, to enjoy them to your fullest ability while staying focused and giving it 100% as well. So I suppose just being grateful and thoroughly enjoying the experience while you're at it. Yeah, that would definitely be the thing that I look back on and be grateful for.
That positive mindset is something that kind of is a hallmark of yours. And when scrolling through your Instagram, you can see that you've got loads of reasons to be positive. Two things that struck me from looking at it was, firstly, where you are in Killarney and having the time to be around the area. It's such an area of incredible beauty. It must be brilliant for your mind to be able to go outside and look at those incredible sights, and almost be on your own in there when you need to be.
Definitely. As I said before, and I'll say it again, I firmly believe that County Kerry is definitely the nicest county in Ireland, full stop. Don't care what anybody says. But no, all jokes aside, we're all extremely grateful down here in Killarney to actually be living here. And going back to, it's the most ideal place to be and to be living during the middle of a global pandemic, because there's so many scenic areas and places to go that are within the restrictions and guidelines to go and actually visit these scenic areas to just chill and relax the mind and take it easy for a bit. So we're really grateful to have all of that down here in Killarney.
The second thing that struck me from looking at your Instagram page, Jordan, is that there is a blossoming relationship there with a Canadian Paralympian, and I believe this relates back to Dubai.
Yeah.
Would you like to tell us more about that?
I suppose I will, yeah. So my girlfriend, Maddie Wilson Walker, she's actually an athlete on the Canadian Paralympic team, who I met over in Dubai at the World Championships, funnily enough. She's a fantastic athlete, extremely inspiring. When she was 4 years old, she was diagnosed with meningitis and only had a 3% chance of living. And in the process, lived, but happened to have both of her legs amputated below the knee. And she also had to get a couple of her fingers amputated, as well as being deaf in one ear. And at the age of 20, she became a world record holder in the long jump. So she's an extremely inspiring and motivating lady. And that's where I happened to meet her at the World Championships, which was quite funny, but she's a fantastic athlete and a great person.
You have trained together, I believe, and how has that gone? Considering her discipline is long jump and yours is high jump, there are some similarities and differences there.
Definitely. So after the World Championships, about a month after, I went to go visit Maddie over in Canada, and we got a small bit of training done, and it was very interesting to see how she trains, and with the blades as well, how they work and how she coordinates herself actually approaching the board in the long jump and hitting it correctly. So that was a very cool experience to see how she manages all of that. And then she actually came over to visit myself in February, and she thoroughly enjoyed Killarney and Kerry in general. And it's very great because I understand exactly what her training is about and what drills and specific stuff she has to do. I understand all of that, and she understands the technical aspects of the high jump too. So it's quite unique that in a relationship we can both understand each other and understand the sacrifices and training that has to be done if you want to be the best. And that's the mentality that we both have as well. We both want to be the best. We both want to raise the bar and continue to keep on pushing the boundaries as well.
It must also, aside from the competition or the understanding of the mechanics of competition, it must also be nice to have somebody of a similar mindset that you're able to speak to, who's going through a similar experience, I assume, in Canada during lockdown. Is it a great way of relieving stress, is having those conversations?
Definitely. It's quite unusual, to be honest with you, to actually have a girlfriend who has the exact same goal as mine. Like, we both want to go to Paralympic Games, represent our individual countries, and win medals. That is our ultimate goals, and obviously enjoy the process as well while we do it. So we both understand, as I said, the sacrifices and training that has to be done to actually get there. So it's really cool how we can talk to each other about that process, and especially now during this tough time, keeping each other motivated to continue to keep on training hard to get to our goals and reach them.
It's good to see you in a good place, Jordan. You're clearly making the most of lockdown. You're living your best lockdown life, it seems.
Yeah, definitely. Look, I'm just trying to keep positive and I'm trying to keep as motivated and stay as positive as I possibly can. There's a quote that I've used actually on a couple of my recent social media posts, and that is, we can't control the situation we're in, but what we can control is the way in which we react towards it. And what I mean by that is by continuing to stay positive and try seek this as an opportunity to better yourself in some way or some shape or form. And with the positive mindset that hopefully everybody has, we will all get through this and this situation will all pass us by.
Like the rest of the world, you're probably in some ways trying to fill up time. And one of the ways to fill up the time is to watch some interesting programs on TV. And considering your background, I wonder, have you been watching the Michael Jordan documentary and what you have thought of it so far?
I think you only need to take one look at my top here, and it has the Air Jordan logo right here as well. So I'm, like, as a former basketball player, I'm obviously a huge fan of Michael Jordan. I have been watching the Last Dance documentary, and it's been really inspiring actually too. And it's also another way that it has kept me motivated to keep on training, because Michael Jordan's mindset when he used to go into a game and even when he used to train was second to none. I haven't seen a mindset like that from any athlete in my entire life. Definitely one of the greatest athletes to ever walk on the planet. So I've thoroughly enjoyed it so far. And I actually watched the last two episodes of it last night, and it was a really good finish. Unfortunately, there's no more episodes to watch, but it was really good and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Just for people that don't know, you've got a massive background in basketball. Can you just take us through that a little bit?
Yeah, so I before I started the high jump, I was actually a basketball player. I started playing basketball when I was 5 years old. My father was a basketball player for St. Paul's Killarney, the local team here in Kerry, in Killarney, and I was always kind of in a basketball background, so it was only destined for myself to actually take part and play a bit of basketball myself. So when I first started playing, I remember going into the court for the first time for my first training session, and everybody just stopped what they were doing and started looking at me and started pointing at me as if that I couldn't see them. And they were whispering to their teammates saying, how is this guy ever going to play basketball? He's only got one hand. But what happened 9 years later is that I became the first one-handed basketball player to ever represent their country nationally in the world. A feat and an achievement that no man or woman in the history has ever done. So that to this day is still one of the greatest achievements that I've ever done in my entire life, and something that I will always look back on in pride.
An incredible achievement, really, Jordan, when you look at it. And when you're watching The Last Dance, do you see some parallels between that mindset that Michael Jordan has had and your own mindset at the time when you were playing basketball and having carried that forward into the high jump?
Definitely. Like before I started the high jump, I was a guy that was involved in pretty much every single sport, except when it came to the time where I actually declared and played for Ireland. That's when I focused solely on basketball. But while I was playing in all of these different mainstream sports, I was competing and playing in able body competition my entire life. So when I actually took part in the high jump and started taking it seriously and training at a serious level, I just continued to keep that mindset, should I say, straight into the high jump. So that's why to this day, I'm competing in mainstream and everybody competition throughout the season. Last season, as you know, finishing fourth in the National Senior Championships, which is definitely one of my greatest achievements today as well. Jumping a PB of 1.95 m, getting on really well with all the other jumpers in the country as well. I respect them and they respect me as if I'm one of their own as well, which is fantastic. So that's just my attitude that I've had throughout my entire life. It doesn't matter if I've got one hand, two hands, three hands, four hands. It doesn't matter. I want to compete and be able to compete to the best of my ability against the best of competition. And that's the mindset I'm always going to have.